It began with the unholy roar of a chainsaw tearing through the stillness at 6:17 a.m., a sound so jagged it could have peeled paint off a barn. I was slumped over my kitchen table, cradling my first mug of black coffee, still bleary-eyed from a night spent wrestling a busted tractor, when a noise hit me like a brick to the skull. Then came the voice, shrill, commanding, and dripping with the kind of self-righteousness that makes you want to chuck your mug out the window. This is about standards, mister. Harrow. Aesthetic integrity. I stumbled to the porch in my worn-out boots and a flannel shirt I hadn't bothered to button, squinting into the dawn. There she was, Marjorie Blackwell, self-appointed dictator of the Pine Crest Homeowners Association, decked out in a neon green tracksuit that screamed, "I power walk for justice." She stood with her hands on her hips, barking orders at a crew of hired hands who were busy dismantling my split rail fence, the one I'd built with my own sweat and calluses 5 summers ago. The air smelled of sawdust and gasoline, and the sight of those splintered posts hitting the dirt felt like a personal gut punch. Marjorie turned, spotted me, and flashed a smile so smug it could have curdled milk. "Good morning, Daniel. Don't worry, we're upgrading your property value." That was the moment I knew war had arrived on my 60-acre slice of nowhere, and it was wearing spandex. I'd moved out here, 10 miles west of the nearest gas station, to escape the world's noise. My land was a patchwork of rolling hills, dotted with scruffy mesquite trees, a herd of ornery goats, and a vegetable garden that produced more weeds than tomatoes. I fixed antique tractors for fun, brewed moonshine that could strip rust off a fender, and let my mutt, Rusty, roam free without a leash or a care. It wasn't much, but it was Minea sanctuary carved from dirt and determination. Then the developers came. 2 years back, Pinecrest Estates sprouted up like a rash on the eastern edge of my property. Rows of identical beige boxes, each with a manicured lawn and a garage big enough for an SUV they'd never take off-road. With them came the HOA, a gang of clipboard-wielding busybodies armed with bylaws thicker than a phone book. I'd ignored their early warnings letters about my non-compliant barn siding, suggestions I pave my dirt driveway with something less rustic. I figured they'd tire themselves out eventually, like dogs chasing a truck they couldn't catch. I underestimated Marjorie Blackwell. She was a force of nature, 5'4", with a bob haircut sharper than a razor and sunglasses that hid eyes cold enough to freeze a rattlesnake. She'd once sent me a 3-page email about how my rooster's crowing VUI, OLAT, noise, ordinances, never mind that the nearest neighbor was a half-mile away. When she decided my fence didn't match the community VY sound, she didn't just complain. She brought in the heavy artillery. That morning, as her crew hauled off the last of my fence, I didn't charge out screaming. I stood there, coffee going cold in my hands, watching her strut around like she'd just conquered a new frontier. She handed me a crumpled sheet of papera permit with her loopy signature and an HOA stamp that looked like it had been forged by a toddler with a marker. "This is for your own good," she said, patting my shoulder like I was a lost puppy. "We're bringing Pinecrest into the 21st century." I called the sheriff, figuring law and order might still mean something out here. Deputy Rawls showed up an hour later, scratching his stubble and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Marjorie's husband bankrolled my last campaign, he admitted, kicking a clod of dirt. "Best settle this CIVYL like, Dan. CIVYL like." As if chainsawing my fence wasn't a declaration of war. Marjorie waved from her hybrid SUV as she peeled out, Leah VYing me with a cloud of dust and a simmering fury. That night, I sat on the porch with Rusty, the crickets chirping a mournful tune. The ruined fence line gaped like a wound across my land, and I could already picture Marjorie's next move, maybe a row of plastic flamingos or a sign proclaiming, "Welcome to Pinecrest. No rustics allowed." I wasn't about to let her win. Not with lawsuits or fists, those weren't my style. I needed something sharper, something that'd make her regret ever crossing me. That's when it hit me. If she hated my fence so much, I'd give her something worse. Something alive, untamed, and gloriously spiteful. By sunrise, I had a plan. I grabbed my phone and dialed Uncle Theo, a grizzled ex-botanist who'd spent his retirement cultivating a greenhouse full of desert nightmares. When I told him about Marjorie and her HOA crusade, he cackled so hard I heard his dentures clack. "Boy, you're about to make her life a levying hell," he said. "I've got just the stuffed prickly pear, barrel cactus, agave, so mean it'll cut you for looking at it wrong. Bring your truck." I drove to Theo's place that weekend, rusty riding shotgun, and loaded up a trailer with enough spiny vengeance to stop an army. Theo threw in a few extras yucca with dagger-like leaves, a cholla he swore could jump onto anything dumb enough to brush by. "Plant him close," he VY said, grinning like a mad scientist. "Make a fortress. She'll need a tank to get through." I didn't bother hiding it. I towed that trailer right past the Pine Crest clubhouse, cacti bouncing in the bed, and gave Marjorie's gaggle of HOA cronies a wave as they gawked from their brunch tables. Marjorie caught me unloading the first barrel cactus that afternoon. She stormed over, arms crossed, her sunglasses reflecting my dirt-streaked face. "What in God's name are you doing, Daniel?" she demanded. I hefted a prickly pear into place and grinned. "Landscaping, Marjorie. Native plants sustainable, drought-resistant. You're always yammering about green, levying, right?" Her lips pursed so tight, I thought they'd vanish. "This is an eyesore," she snapped. "It's a safety hazard." I shrugged. "Check the zoning laws. Cactus counts as natural fencing on AG land. Deer deterrent, too. Safety first." She didn't have a comeback, not yet. She just glared, wheels spinning behind those oversized shades, then marched back to her beige kingdom. I kept planting. Friends showed up to help Jake with a six-pack of IPA, Lila with a wheelbarrow of jagged lava rocks to line the base. We worked under the brutal sun, cursing as the cholla bit us, laughing as the wall took shape. By the end of the week, it stretched 200 feet along the property line, 6 feet tall in spots, a jagged tapestry of green and gold that gleamed like a barbed wire crown. It wasn't just a barrier. It was a middle finger to Pine Crest, carved in thorns. Marjorie didn't waste time. She hosted a neighborhood beautification brunch the next morning, setting up a trellis of fake roses right where my fence used to stand. Her posse sipped mimosas and nodded as she droned on about elevating property values. Then someone pointed at my cactus wall. The chatter died. A woman in a floppy hat asked if it was some kind of art installation. Another tripped over a rock and nearly impaled herself on a yucca. Marjorie's face went from smug to scarlet in 3 seconds flat. She stormed over that afternoon, VYing a manicured finger. "This is a public menace," she shrieked. I handed her a laminated copy of the zoning code and smiled. "Take it up with the county, Marge." She hissed, "This isn't over," and stomped off. I called back. Never thought it was. What she didn't know, what I hadn't told anyone yet, was that the cactus wall was just phase 1. I'd already ordered a shipment of Ocotillo wands from a nursery in Tucson, whipped thin stalks that'd sprout into a levying barbed wire nightmare come spring. And I'd started sketching plans for a moat nothing fancy, just a ditch lined with thorn bushes and maybe a few solar-powered sprinklers to keep trespassers soggy and miserable. Marjorie wanted a war? I'd give her a siege. The first skirmish came fast. A day after the wall went up, a woman in a sundress showed up with a camera, posing her kid in front of the cacti for some desert chic photo shoot. She didn't see the cholla until it was too late. The kid brushed against it, screamed as a spine lodged in his arm, and the mom yanked at it, only to get stuck herself. I watched from the porch, sipping iced tea, as they hobbled back to their Prius, trailing curses and cactus bits. Marjorie arrived minutes later, glaring daggers. "Your wall attacked them," she spat. "Their fault for trespassing," I said. "Signs are up. Can't help it if city folks don't know cholla from a chia pet." The next morning, a note appeared on my gate, taped with enough duct tape to restrain a bowl. "Your landscaping is a hazard. Remove it or face consequences. Marjorie Blackwell, Pine Crest HOA president." I laughed so hard Rusty barked in confusion. I didn't write back. Instead, I strung solar lights along the walls, Basteiny glowing sentinel sand hammered in a sign. "Enter at your own risk. Nature bites back." Marjorie's response? She called animal control. 2 officers rolled up in a dusty pickup, looking like they'd drawn the short straw. Got a complaint about neglected livestock and noise. One said, eyeing my goats, who were munching hay in festive bandanas. I gave them the grand, tore chickens clucking in their custom coop. Rusty sprawled on a dog bed the size of a couch. My horse, Maverick, nickering for carrots. They left with lemonade and a promise to tell Marjorie to chill out, but not before one muttered, she's got too much time on her hands. I caught her watching from across the road, half hidden behind a juniper, and waved. She didn't wave back. The wall started attracting attention. Locals drove out to snap photos. A biker asked if he could film a music video in front of it. A kid on a skateboard dared his buddy to touch a spine and ended up with a Band-Aid and a story. Marjorie countered with an HOA newsletter rant, the threat of unruly vegetation, complete with a grainy shot of my wall and warnings about snakes and scorpions. I didn't bother responding. I just added a row of garden gnomes along the base, each painted with a tiny HOA clipboard and named after her board members. The neighborhood kids loved it. Marjorie didn't. Then she escalated. One night, my trail cams caught her sneaking along the wall in black yoga pants, wielding a shovel like a ninja. She smashed 3 solar lights before a cholla snagged her ankle. She yelped, dropped the shovel, and limped back to her car, swearing loud enough to wake the coyotes. I mailed stills from the footage to the HOA board and signed, with a note, beware nocturnal vandals. Might be rabid. The next time I saw Marjorie, she had a limp and a scowl that could have curdled whiskey. She pivoted to passive-aggressive warfare. Across from a wall, she installed a pergola dripping with plastic ivy and wind chimes that clanged like a broken music box. She hired a landscaper to sculpt her bushes into peacocks until the heat turned them into sad, drooping lumps. My wall, meanwhile, bloomed. Prickly pear flowers erupted in defiant pinks and yellows, drawing bees and butterflies. A hummingbird dive-bombed a solar light, mistaking it for a rival. Kids rode their bikes out to gawk. One asked if it was a castle for cactus nights. I told him, more like a shield against meddlers. Marjorie wasn't done. She had one last card to play and it nearly cost her everything. It was a sticky July morning, the kind where the air feels like a wet blanket and the cicadas hum a lazy dirge. I was tossing hay to the goats when Rusty's ears perked up. A shadow moved near the gate. Marjorie, VY sore pulled low, clutching a pair of industrial-grade shears and a folder labeled Urgent HOA Directive. She stepped over a no trespassing sign like it was a welcome mat and started hacking at a prickly pear, muttering about encroachment and eyesores. I opened my mouth to yell, but Maverick beat me to it. My 16-hand gelding thundered up from the pasture, mane flying, eyes blazing with the fury of a horse who'd had enough. He let out a whinny that rattled the windows, and Marjorie spun around, shears flailing. She bolted, tripping over a rock, and Maverick chased her to the wall's edge before stopping short, snorting like a dragon. She scrambled in her SUV, gravel flying, and peeled out. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my pitchfork. The next day, a certified letter arrived. Marjorie claimed Maverick had assaulted her, causing severe emotional distress and a twisted wrist. She threatened a lawsuit. I dug up the trail cam footage her trespassing, chopping, fleeing in, called my lawyer, Cassie, a spitfire who'd once gotten a developer fined for building too close to a creek. She watched the clip, grinned, and said, "This is going to be a slaughter." Court day arrived, hot and humid. Marjorie swept in wearing a blazer that looked like it belonged on a yacht. Her lawyer, a sweaty guy with a comb-over, clinging for dear life. He argued my wall and horse were hostile hazards. Cassie countered with the footage Marjorie's midnight vandalism, her daylight pruning spree, Maverick's heroic charge set to Sweet Home, Alabama for flair. The judge, a grizzled old-timer, smirked and ruled in my favor, dismissing Marjorie's claims and warning her about trespassing. Cassie filed a countersuit for the fence, the wall, and fees. 2 weeks later, we won. Marjorie had to pay up, and the HOA got slapped with a fine for gross overreach. The story didn't end there. The courtroom clip of Maverick chasing Marjorie went VY Row Rancher's Revenge racked up millions of VYUs. My wall became a local legend. Tourists posed with it. A brewery named a beer Cactus Kick. Marjorie resigned from the HOA, put her house up for sale, and slunk away. But she couldn't resist one last swing. At her farewell party, I watched from the porch as guests drifted toward the wall, laughing and snapping pics. Marjorie, in a peach pantsuit, slipped away with hedge clippers, aiming for a barrel cactus. She didn't see the hornet nest inside. 3 snips, and chaos erupted, buzzing, shrieking, flailing. She crashed through Cholla, hornets in her hair, and collapsed in her gravel driveway as partygoers gawked. The VY Deo hit the internet by midnight. HOA Queen versus Hornet Hell, and sealed her fate. Today, the wall stands taller, adorned with a plaque. To Marjorie's folly may meddlers beware. I've got my peace back, sipping coffee as the sun rises over a spiny empire. Somewhere, Marjorie's probably terrorizing a condo board. But out here, the cactus reigns supreme and it stings. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.